This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, how there, ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to another Sports Catastrophe on this day. And on this day, December 28th, in the year 1975, a classic series would start as Russian touring teams would face off against NHL teams and all that. Now, if you're a hanger-on of my Sports Catastrophe series, you would know that last year, for December 31st, I did the famous game between Montreal and the Red Army, which saw a 3-3 tie. And, best on best. The Red Army were the best team in the Soviet Union, and the Habs were the best team in Canada. So, anyway, on a Sunday night in 1975, the Red Army team would take on the New York Rangers, as you can see by the newspaper article if you're watching it by video. The Rangers actually got off to a fast start. Within 21 seconds, Steve Vickers, a pretty good player who actually won the Calder Trophy for Rookie of the Year, scored on a goal from Phil Esposito and Rod Gilbert. Now, of course, this is just a month removed from the famous Rangers trade with Boston that they got Phil Esposito and Carol Fontenay for Brad Park and Sean Rotel. So Espo made an impact, making it 1-0. However, the Red Army would score the next 7 goals in order, as Alexandrov scored at 4:04 from Petrov and Gusev. Then Vikolov scored from Shulikov and Alexandrov at 5:19. And then Harlamov, the legendary Red Army player, who was so good for the Soviets in '72 that Bobby Clark decided to slash his ankle and put him out of action, scored from Vasilyev and Petrov. 18 seconds left in the first period to make it 3-1 Red Army. Ron Greschner would take 3 penalties in that first period, and Doug Jarrett took the other one. So the Rangers were shorthanded 4 times, as the Red Army did score on the Jarrett penalty. Regardless, in the second period, the Rangers were trying to take down the Red Army, but within a minute and a half, they were down 4-1 as Petrov scored from Harlamov and Mikhailov, both legends of the Red Army, making it 4-1. Then Vikulov scored his second of the night from Shulikov and Alexandrov, making it 5-1 Red Army. And then Mikhailov made it 6-1, the big Russian number 2, from Harlamov and Gusev. And you can kind of see this game was going to be a farce. So the Red Army were up 6-1. Popov and Gusev did get penalties for Russia, for the Red Army team, but nothing came out of it. And Johnstone was penalized for the Rangers. Red Army scored to make it 7-1 on the goal, but Petrov his second from Mikhailov and Harlamov, as the Red Army were taking the Rangers to task 7-1. They figured the first game would be in New York, the media capital of the world, if you will. The Rangers did score a pair of goals, as Rod Gilbert at the 15:31 mark scored from Phil Esposito, and then Espo scored from Vickers and Sakarak at 17:47. So Phil Esposito had a 3-point night. He was involved in every goal of the Rangers. Whereas Harlamov, the legend that he is, put up 4 points, a goal and 3 assists. So Harlamov had more points than the Rangers had goals. Shots were 41-29 in front of 17,000 fans. Tretiak and John Davidson came in. The 0-0 of John Davidson, who the Rangers picked up from the Blues. It was just huge all the time. So the Rangers were humbled in that one. So anyway, it wasn't just CSKA Moscow, as they called them, or the Central Red Army team, as they called themselves, coming in to play NHL teams. It was actually the Soviet Wings, Krivka Sovietev, would also be there. So So the next night, the Soviet wings started, and they took on Pittsburgh and beat them 7-4. So that looked pretty impressive. Well, then Red Army on December 31st went into Montreal, played that 3-3 game that I talked about last year. And then on January 4th, the Wings would take on the Sabres. And the Soviet Wings got their butts handed to them 12-6. As Buffalo used their high-power offense that got them to the Cup final the previous year and put 12 up on them, which was kind of amazing. Then on January 7th, the Wings played their third game in Chicago and beat the Hawks and Tony Esposito 4-2. The next night, January 8th, Red Army went to Boston to take on the Big Bad Bruins and beat the Big Bad Bruins 5-2. Meanwhile, 2 days later, on January 10th, the Soviet Wings ended their four-game foray and beat the Islanders 2-1. The Islanders were not as good as they were, like in the late 70s, early 80s. Meanwhile, the Red Army team went into Philadelphia, played a famous 4-1 game against the Flyers, which saw them get intimidated by the Broad Street Bullies. And after Ed Van Imp hit on, I think it was Harlamov, I can't remember who it was, but anyway, the Russians decided enough was enough, we're going home. And they were about to leave. But when they were told they were not going to get any money and all that, and there would be future consequences, they came back to play, and the Flyers intimidated them and won the game 4-1. So the Soviets practically looked good. The two Soviet teams were 5-2-1 combined, which wasn't pretty for the NHL squads. But it was a lesson in that Russian hockey was here to stay. After all, they won several world championships and Olympics, so you have to give them kudos. You really do. Anyhow, I'm Jeff Diamond.